This next one goes out to all of you who swore by Napster in the early 2000s and whatever the company we were thinking of was called.
It's probably Crapster.
This is one not from LA, just like the next one you're going to do, but this particular location was a big part of the city for a while, so I'm going to try to focus mostly on just that store.
Yeah.
But we need just a brief rundown of the history of Tower Records.
Get out.
No.
Leave.
No, I'm not Tower Records. It started with a guy named Russ Solomon who started selling used 78s for 10 cents in his dad's drugstore in Sacramento in 1941. The name of that drugstore was Tower Drugstore because it was next to the Tower Theater in Sacramento.
Okay.
So by 1961, Solomon opened up his first dedicated record store on Watt Avenue in Sacramento called Tower Records. 1968, the San Francisco location opened, and now the Tower Records brand blows up, which takes us to the Sunset Strip, 8801 Sunset Boulevard. But before Tower opened up at this spot, you will find this location to be of great interest to fans of L.A. Meekly. I don't know if you knew this. First,
whoa.
I don't know if you...
Whoa, you're big fans of...
Do you
And then you
listen-
turn to the other host of the podcast like, you probably don't know this
Do
because
you
you're
listen?
dumb.
Do you ever listen? Oh, you didn't buy a shirt. The first thing built at this spot was in 1935. It was a restaurant called Simon's Drive-In. That's not the interesting part yet. But,
No.
But do you know Simon's Drive-In?
I'm thinking of the big photo book of LA, and there's it's not that.
No, it's not that. But it might be.
You don't know.
No, I saw it. I read your thoughts.
I have
gotta see that movie.
Let's go right now.
I was reading your thoughts. I bet Ren was reading BB-8's thoughts.
Listen. We turn Siri on. Siri reads this.
Yeah.
We go see Star Wars. We come back. Siri's done.
I think that's a bad idea. But in 1945,
Yeah, Star Wars! Yeah, hit him with that thing, that laser sword thing. Hit him.
Emperor, I love you. So 1945, this place became Dolores's Drive-In, which is not a name I like. And then in the 50s, it became Jack's on the Strip Diner until the early 60s when the restaurant train was over and the building was demolished to make way for a showroom for Shoreham Towers Apartments. But then, here's where it gets interesting for you. In 1964, it came under control of a Mr. Earl William Muntz, or as you may know him, Madman Muntz. This was Madman Muntz's store.
Really?
He opened up at
and
this
that became
spot.
Tower Records.
Kind of.
Okay.
It was. We talked about him in our local commercials.
It's
the
so
live
funny
show.
that you said Madman Muntz because I was like, TV. Like, oh no, that was his daughter's name.
Well, I mean, there's a reason he named his daughter TV. It was
Yeah.
here he developed his 4-track tapes, allowed people to listen to albums in their car, which in itself was revolutionary.
Yeah.
Not just radios in your Model T anymore. Now you can listen to cassettes.
You can pick
in
your own music,
Yeah.
which is what we do every day.
Thank you, Madman Muntz.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Saluting him.
And he's saluting backwards. And his tongue is flapping everywhere. He sold hundreds of thousands of these things, and he pioneered car stereo systems in addition to already having popularized calling television TV and also being insane. So already this location had overall a lunatic. So already this location had serious music credentials, but not even the madman could hold on to that spot for very long. The store was closed in 1970 and then demolished. So that building's gone, but it was the spot.
It was that spot.
And that's just in time for Tower Records' big new expansion. So a new building was built just for them, for Tower Records, on this spot. In 1971, they opened their doors to the hip young crowd of music lovers desperate for a place to call the VW bus that they live in. This was the first Tower Records in Southern California, and it was in the perfect location at the perfect time to become a huge hit.
Yeah.
It was the early 70s, which means that there were a ton of high-profile bands either living in or coming to LA because so many record labels were now in the city thanks to Capitol Records trailblazing. The store was right down the street from the headquarters of a lot of those companies along the Sunset Strip. It was also within walking distance of where these bands would play and hang out, like the Whiskey and the Viper Room, the Roxy, the Rainbow Bar and Grill, where they'd hang out. Not Clumpsy. What's his name? The guy who would always be at the Rainbow Bar and Grill.
Lemmy.
Clumpsy. So right there, you've got a built-in community.
You don't know metal.
Yeah, I know Clumpsy though. So there's a built-in community, and the Tower brand was known and trusted already. So right off the bat, plus they were open until midnight every night and 1 a.m. on the weekends.
So you're talking about Wallach's up to a certain point where like kids didn't find this cool quite for like a day, but they found this cool, and this is what immediately happened up the street.
Exactly.
Sunset
It was like
was
2 miles
dead.
away.
Yeah. past
Dads were
Fairfax.
shopping there. Drop your kids off there.
Exactly.
The advantage Tower had over a place like Wallach's, which was still open but dying very painfully when they just opened, was since that they were a big chain, they had low prices and deep back catalogs that were in stock.
Okay.
Wallach's didn't have that. They had all the new stuff, but they also had old, hard to find stuff on hand. Like, oh, do you have the first album ever by
The Birds?
Yeah,
which
the
is
Birds.
like a year old.
Yeah, that really obscure band, the Birds. In 1974, Guinness Book of World Records named them the biggest record store in the world.
Wow.
As we've seen so many times before in LA history, what was so great over on this part of the street was literally killing the old guard Boulevard a few blocks away. It was draining the life force, much like Starkiller Base. We gotta go. Their staff was also extremely knowledgeable and passionate about music, and of course they were snobbish. Their slogan was "No music, no life," which few of them had. There was also no dress code for the staff, which made it feel like it was being run by the underground scene, even though it was the definition of a corporate entity at this point. But it felt like, this is a cool place. It felt like a Rockaway Records, but it was not. Like, this was engineered to be like that.
For sure.
Being on Sunset Boulevard, of course, that meant that there were always big advertisements for new albums plastered all over the building above and
some of my favorite photos from LA 70s Sunset Strip are like the billboards above Tower Records.
It's all the iconic images. Like, that's how you know what year it was.
Yeah.
It was all, their iconic red and yellow paint job. It was just a cool place to be, and all the cool people went there. And since it was where it was also where every celebrity and musician in town went to shop or to perform. On any given day, you would run into a local DJ or Ringo Starr or Robert Plant or Stevie Wonder or Ella Fitzgerald or George Burns, because he has to be in every episode now.
He's the male counterpart to Mary Pickford.
Yeah. Oh, the children they could have had. Those small bug-eyed children. But what would Gracie think? Everybody had album signings there. Bob Marley. There's pictures of Bob Marley signing.
That's pretty cool.
It's weird. John Lennon did a TV ad for them for that location in 1974. Axl Rose worked at Tower Video across the street. The store would open early exclusively for Elton John when he was in town to come shop alone. Like I said, the tons of bands played concerts there to promote their new albums. David Lee Roth rappelled down a fake Matterhorn they built on top of it for his new album, Matterhorn. Alice Cooper drove up in a big trash truck for his new album, Trash. Someone else did something literal for their new album, Literal. Duran Duran had a reunion concert there in 1997. It was hip, it was new, it captured the scene, the music scene of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I kept thinking of it like being, for music, what Meltdown was for comics. And comedy, but it was way more high profile and way more popular. It wasn't the first Tower Records location, but it did quickly become the most well-known Tower Records location.
Yeah, it's iconic. It has documentaries about it.
Well, as the Colin Hanks documentary from 2015 was called, in reference to the sign put up outside, in reference to the George Harrison song, All Things Must Pass. Just as Wallach's was destroyed by Tower Records, pretty much, a new enemy emerged to destroy the victor, the internet. In 1999, Tower Records had almost 200 locations in 15 countries. It was taking in $1 billion a year. That same year, Napster came out. In the year 2000, Tower Records lost $10 million. In 2001, they lost $90 million. So this ship was sinking fast. They tried discounting their prices, but even then, it was like $12 an album when you could get it online for free. Why would you?
You could download a virus for the same name of a hit track for free.
When you can lose your grandma's identity to a Russian person for free. It pays for itself. Pretty soon, 3 of the major music companies stopped selling to Tower Records because they weren't paying their bills. It came out that the company was $210 million in debt. They filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2004 and then again in 2006, and that was when the company had to be sold to the LA-based Great American Group for $134 million, who specialized in liquidation, and they put their specialties to work right away and began liquidating Tower Records. They had 89 stores left that were still open, including the Sunset Strip location. That location closed that same year, with the rest of them in 2006. And in 2007, the building was turned into a giant ad for Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. Tower Records...
All things must pass, indeed.
All things pass a Megorium. So Tower Records Sunset was gone, and with it took not only a bunch of small independent labels who depended on them to sell their albums, it also took an entire scene and spirit in the city with it. In 2007, it became a clothing store called Live on Sunset until 2012 when they closed, and it was being considered to be turned into a gym. The building sat empty for a couple years under constant threat of demolition, but it was saved in 2014 by Gibson Guitars, who signed a 15-year lease to turn it into a showroom. But then Gibson filed for bankruptcy in 2018.
Because people were downloading guitars. Because Guitar Hero came out.
I could buy one from Russia. Gibson now had to bail on the lease. So since then, it's basically been an empty building, which is insane that a building in a location like that could stay empty for coming up on 2 years now. But then I saw that the rent there is $230,000 a month, and I thought that makes sense.
Let it sit there.
Let it die.
Yeah.
It's currently up for lease, but a lot of groups have been trying for years to get it designated as a historic landmark and to try to turn it into a music museum or a Sunset Strip museum. But here's the problem. There really isn't anything spectacular about this building itself. It isn't a nice building architecturally, and it's not the same building Madman Muntz was in, which could have been something. Yeah. So in designating it, they wouldn't be designating the building itself. They'd be designating the stuff that happened inside the building, which also is tricky because there's absolutely no residue of what used to be there inside of the place, and the sign isn't even still up. Like
It's a coffin with no body.
It's a real Dracula situation. It's a tricky case to consider it for historic designation. It's hard to historically protect a scene that no longer exists.
Yeah.
It's times like these that makes me glad I lost that election for city council by such a big landslide. But if you're really itching for some tower records, you can go to the 9-story one they still have in Tokyo.
Are you going?
I'm sleeping there.
It's a hotel too. I remember going to that. Did you ever go to that tower?
No, I never went there. Never. I would never go there. I was a Virgin Records kind of guy.
In high school, we would go to Melrose sometimes, and I would stop at Headline Records, which is a punk record shop there, and it's really great. I wanted to do a segment on it, but I ran out of time. I would just go in and like, do you have any Charles Bronson? And then they'd have to just like, it's a French guy. I'm not gonna do a French accent, but yeah. Anyways, we'd also go to Sunset Strip. We would go to In-N-Out, and we would walk all the way to the Roxy and then take the bus all the way back and stop at like.
So you figured out the bus finally.
But we'd go to Meltdown. We'd go to that plaza where the movie theater is. Sometimes we see like an independent movie. We'd go to Tower. We'd go to a newsstand, and then we'd walk by the Whiskey and the Roxy.